do it. How do you get about 40 to 45 grams in the morning? Well, your first meal.
So that's always the question. People are busy, they're running out the door. So we actually develop protein shakes for that. So I was at the center of sort of the whey protein explosion. We sort of studied that and, we make protein shakes. So I have a protein shake probably 5 days a week, so that's how I do it. And I'll get a protein shake. I actually sell a protein shake. We get a protein shake and, I might mix it with yogurt or milk, and then I mix it with blueberries and whatever. So I get a kind of a balanced meal out of a shake. You can do it with, other typical things, eggs and dairy and things. It's important to recognize that the most nutrient dense form of protein is meats. The densest protein. So things like an egg with an ounce or two of Canadian bacon or ham or turkey or something like that, some cheese and a glass of milk is a pretty easy way to get to 35, 40 grams of protein. So, those are probably the two directions we use the most. Making some sort of a egg-based meal that has a significant amount of meats in it. So, I said nobody needs a 16-ounce steak at dinner. Well, have 8 at dinner and have 8 more at breakfast, Eat it, make it cold cuts or whatever. Rewarm it. Eat it on the way out the door as finger food.
Well, I'm happy to do that. I have about 6 to 7 eggs for breakfast in the morning because I like to get my 30 to 40. But I can eat a lot. Like some people just like my sister cannot have that many eggs.
I can't either. And I was the director of research for the American Egg Board, so I can't eat that many eggs either. But it actually, for me, it helps to mix it with ham or turkey or cheese or mix it with other flavors. I find it easier to eat. But for me to eat more than 3 eggs at a meal is a real challenge.
What is the first meal for you? And for most people, getting enough protein, does timing matter of the first meal?
Again, the more stress you're under, I think the earlier it should be, the more catabolic the system. So if you're on Ozempics, I think that first meal should be as soon as you wake up. You want to get out of that catabolic state. I went to the gym today. I work out, pretty regularly. My first meal today, my protein shake today was probably close to 11.
I have the same thing. I eat at 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. I just find that, but I do get 120 grams of protein, get enough fat, don't really eat that many carbohydrates. It's just suitable for my lifestyle.
So that concept of time restricted. So I don't think anybody over the age of 40 should ever fast. We can talk about that. But basically, I'm okay with time restricted eating. I do that all the time. I don't really need 3 meals. It's just more calories, so if I try to limit that middle meal to 200-300 calories, I just don't want much. And frankly, I feel better. So, I have a first meal, 10:30, 11, and I have another meal at 6:37. That's sort of my eating pattern.
So you mentioned you don't suggest people over 40 fast. So I want to ask you about OMAD, 1 meal a day. Do you think that's a good idea?
Depends on what your protein target is. If your protein target's 160 grams per day, as we just said, you max the system out at probably around 60. So that's not a very efficient use of your protein. I just don't think that's good. I think you need to spread it out, try and get more. And as I mentioned earlier, the anabolic effect of the meal in an adult is only about 2.5 hours. So why would you want to limit your protein to only 2.5 hour per day? Elite bodybuilders will actually eat 4 times a day. We know that post-sleep, a 4th meal actually is beneficial for both for muscle mass and strength. So spreading it out, recognizing there's sort of a optimal range of 30 to 60 grams, I think is important to keep in mind. The other end of the spectrum is How about a vegetarian who's only eating 60 per day? Well, they darn well better get 40 into one meal. So that means their other two meals, the worst of all worlds would be to them have 4 meals with 15 in each. That would be the absolute worst thing they could possibly do for body composition, which is not uncommon for vegetarian eating. Because of the high fiber bulk, they'll have lots of small meals. So they're kind of titrating in carbs, but they're totally ignoring protein. So we know that individuals who are on low protein diets really need to be sure they get one meal up in the 40 gram range, or they will reduce their protein synthesis and muscle mass.